Hey everyone, I got a best of 5 Serral versus Clem series for you, so a pretty awesome TvZ, almost guaranteed. It's going to be on Babylon for day number 1. The top left for Basilisk, he is Serral. And in the bottom right for Team Liquid, it is Clem. Clem has been doing a bit more experimentation with different styles of TvZ openers, such as the 2-Rax opener on the front lines of your natural, but it looks like this time around he is going to be playing pretty normal. Serral's also been experimenting with different openers, as you can see here, Extractor Trick 15 Hatch. So this has been making the rounds, and it does seem to be staying around for a few players, but maybe not all of them. But it definitely has affected TvZ, especially recently. And another Extractor Trick, you can hear that into the pool as well, eventually. And then we have 2 of the newer openers, if Clem was going to go for the forward 2-Rax, but he's not, so. I mean, I saw Solar do this, and it was against a bunch of Korean players who are very well known. There, the pool goes. Very well known for the forward 2-Rax. Clem definitely isn't known for it at this point. But it didn't really seem to be all that worth it. Just because the 3 Reaper opener, forward 2-Rax, 3 Reaper, it doesn't really depend on doing a lot of damage. Feels like its strengths lie elsewhere. Because even if you open up, typically, as a Zerg player, you still like, you know, you still do okay against it. You don't usually lose drones, but perhaps I am wrong, and perhaps they have all agreed that, yeah, you know, it's just better to have these faster queens and get set up a bit earlier, and that's totally fine, because I'm not Zerg, and I'm not very good at Zerg. Clem is a Terran player, a little more identifying with him here. We do have a second barracks going down in the back right corner, so he definitely is still opening up in a different way, and this is really the onus is on the Terran player to open up slightly differently every single time. And whether that is right from the get-go with your first barracks building, or your first 2, or command center first, or into a 1-1-1 versus a 2-1-1, a 3cc, you know, all that good stuff. You basically always have to change it. Clem was doing well enough with 3cc basically every game, but I think that also started to hurt him a little bit, as it was expected, and once people got really good at defending some of his early micro and aggression, they were pretty much settled against it. Serral has deflected the first Reaper, obviously knows that it is just a 1-Rax expand, but what he doesn't know is that there's a second and a third barracks on the way, so we are going 2 base, 3 racks. Hold my breath to see if there's a 4th. We do not have a 4th on the way. So that's going to be still a lot of marine pressure. This was the initial version, I want to say, of the 3 or 4 racks that popped up a year and a half ago or something like that. I don't know, I just remember Cure doing a lot of it, and it was a while ago at this point. And then with the onset of the 2 racks meta, we saw a lot of the 2 racks opener into the 4 racks. That became kind of popular. But the 2 base version, 1 racks expand into the 3 racks, that's basically an old cheese at this point. Now, Serral's Overlord is really well positioned for this. Not a lot of Zerg players bother doing this. They do come in from a more typical angle of, like, over here, I guess maybe from this pillar. Perhaps they've even settled their Overlord over here to check gas timings, although, yeah, I mean, probably more over here. But the point is that Serral has tucked it into the back, and so Clem's positioning of his barracks is nearly half as clever as he wants it to be. Serral also is default going into a Roach Warren, which is a bit problematic. Lings have a higher chance, especially without Banelings, of simply dying to these early marine pushes, just because they're vulnerable against them, right? You have to have a certain number of them, you have to combine them with the queens, you have to make sure to get us around. Instead, you go for roaches, and yeah, you still have to have a certain number of them. That's definitely for sure. You can't just have 2 roaches and say, I'm settled. But you can probably buy enough time to get the roaches, and then you don't need as many. They're a bit sturdier. It's really more of just a direct numbers game as opposed to the Marines kiting around and microing around like they would against Lings. So the Overseer comes in, and that revealed, of course, to Clem that it was a lair, but as a Reaper had already gotten in there. And then it also saw that it was the 3 racks openers. That's going to be a lot of marine pressure, but off of 2 bases. So that's a big economic hit to a typical TvZ. And this is really about now trying to control Serral, but again, when it comes to the roaches, it's just so much easier of a numbers game. Look at this little forward creep that Serral is trying to do. Clever. You have the number of roaches that you need. good for you. You know, that's it. That's really no like, oh, I'll out micro you or I'll position you, you know, go up against a wall against lings or something. No, it's just the number of roaches. You get them, man. This is close enough, I would say, but more roaches are on the way, and that's really what makes this an okay defense. There you have it. One queen does go down. Overlord as well. Second one, I believe. And a queen also went down, but the amount of control that you get from this now is pretty limited for Clem. Now he is the one that actually has to be on the back foot, quite defensive against Serral, as the roaches take over that mid game, especially if they threaten the 1-1 roach all in. Now, Serral did cut drones to do this opener that he has chosen, and of course to build the number of roaches necessary to hold against the Marines. But like I said, now that he has control over the map, it's really not a difficult decision for him to drone or build army if necessary. So the next stage of concern for the Serral player is the amount of medevacs that will be flying around, because roaches are infamously not very mobile. A lovely contaminate. You just do not see this all that much anymore. Serral really bringing out all of the tricks of the Zerg race over the last 13 years. We got ourselves a new fashion build order that's old in some ways, but as far as doing it all the time, I guess it's new. And then you have the Overlord creep spread to further advance your creep, and then you also have contaminate, which it just feels like they've kind of been forgotten about occasionally, but Serral's really bringing it. Clem's number of Marines seems high enough, but when they stim and they don't get to chase down all the roaches they would desire, that second round of engagement is where it's much more concerning. Plus, you don't know how many roaches are reinforcing. Clem, as you can see, trying to get everything he can from that stim, does find a couple more roaches, but then has to be concerned about the amount of stims that he really has to give. And Serral was very, very cognizant of that. That's why I went ahead and forced it. Serral's up to 66 drones on 4 bases. He is heading into Tunneling Claws and Burrow, but he is also producing the number of overlords that would then lead to a roach max out. Metabolic boost is on the way as well, so he could have a preparation. Why that's so hard to say today. We could have Serral prepare to go into Banelings and then into a longer game should the max roach play not work out. But Clem in a bit of trouble here. His opener was not very great at all. You know, it limited his economy and didn't really do a whole lot to Serral. Again, suppressing the Zerg drone count is only so good. And then his tank production has been delayed. Not by too much, but a little bit. And every little bit counts. Now, it is going to be an infestation bit actually coming down here. So that is the absolute confirmation that we're moving over more into a macro game. And Clem actually just got a scout on that, I believe. So the 2 medevac drop not doing anything. However, that's a pretty good scout. Unfortunately, the army on the front lines caught off guard. Didn't expect the roach attack to already be here. And probably didn't expect the double Overlord drop of roaches. These Tunneling Claws actually might have been gotten in there, but this is from the Overlord drop into the main base. Burrow still effective. It's going to force Clem to build a lot of missile turrets and always have different sects of army around to try and deal with this, so that's very annoying indeed. So far, Clem is handling this very last-second scout on the situation with class. One tank goes down, second tank barely saved here, but he is handling things, only losing 6 SCVs. Keeping on with his production. He is late to his 2-2 upgrades, whereas Serral was pretty lickety-split to them and is also adding in those infestors. So he's going to further buff up his Roach Ravager Infestor army now. Now he's also probably going to go into a hive once he has the resources, but the Infestors first kind of reminded me a lot of Dark, actually. He's really taking control over the map, that much is certain, but Clem defending so far, so good. Definitely has his chance to get to that upgraded bio with the nice amount of tanks, let's say like 6+, and then actually take back some map control, and that's kind of the struggle that we're seeing here. The tug of war that we're seeing is going to be about around that time. Serral having to move on from this composition, and then Clem outscaling him with those upgraded bio units and tanks, and then perhaps even into Ghost, actually, if this is really going to be a late game on Babylon. The drops have been continuing, but they've also been handled rather well by Serral back at home. The creep spread continues forward, is almost approaching Clem's 3rd base, and Clem has started up his 4th and has started up 2 tanks at a time as well. So it does look like we are getting into a pretty solid late game ZVT. 4 base versus what is certainly about to be 5. Serral should be looking for it very soon. Up there it is, actually. And then perhaps even more should he continue to hold on to some map control. But you can see that most of his army's on the front lines. He didn't actually anticipate Clem going for a big old boom drop into the main base. Very risky maneuver from the Terran player. The question is, can they hold it home with all the tanks on siege? That would be questionable, but the army of the Zerg racing back to try and handle the main base attack. The Hive is under pressure. That is actually getting gunned down. No, he refocuses on the army, but it seems like the army's not going to be enough anyway. He's going to get everything at once. However, Clem does get caught off guard in the middle. He thought that Serral was going to send his entire army back, and he was wrong about that. Tanks were unsieged. Army got biled as well. They're fungal, not biled, but I think both could have absolutely happened. And the roaches in the main base are still going on. The natural hatchery goes down as well. Everything at once just going down here. Clem really forcing Serral to make some very tough decisions, but then making such a big mistake of his own. Maybe that's going to make up for it. The +2 missile got denied right there, but the +2 carapace barely going to finish up. Drop just drops again, because why not? Serral never going to be comfortable dealing with the drops in this game, as his Hive is just denied. He can't get the Vipers to abduct. The Hydras can only do so much as well, with they're finally on their way out. And things have gone very screwy very quickly, but it looks like overall Clem is the one that's going to settle far more appropriately into that late game TvZ, the beginnings of it anyway. Fourth base, the Planetary, still producing 2 tanks at a time, and even after he lost so many, he is at almost 6 once again, with most of the Zerg army still back at home trying to deal with the threat of the drops. It's not going so hot, honestly. I mean, the drops are being taken care of, I suppose, but he still hasn't really reestablished his main base. These buildings are all bleeding out off of creep, and Clem is getting that Planetary in the third base. He's furthering his tank count. He's starting up his own +3 attack. We know that's the best thing that the Terran player can do. Now, he might still need to be careful about moving out on the map. But I think that he can do it slowly and carefully. The problem was that he just was out in the middle of nowhere on siege tanks. If those are all sieged up, that's a much more viable trade. Probably still gets cleaned up to a certain degree, but it's not as nearly as big of a mistake. So if he does this slowly, carefully, siege hops forward, then he should still have a chance. But Hydras turning into Lurkers now do pose another problem, a different type of problem in this game. But Lurkers without their upgrades, because that Hive was denied, are just not as impressive. And a Concave of Bio can absolutely take advantage of it. The Roaches and Hydras leading those Lurkers alone, and Clem just pounces. He sees the opportunity and guns after him. 4 more Lurkers might finish up here, just barely, in fact. But so much of the fodder has been taken down. Serral over not just relying on the defense in one area as Roaches and Ravagers attacking into the natural. Will it be good enough as Clem now descends upon Serral's 4th base, something that he does need after losing his main and natural. It's really about this 4th and now his 5th that's not even fully mining at this point. Serral's Roach counterattack is getting into the 3rd base at the very least, cleaned up in the natural by the looks of things, destroying the missile turrets to further cause problems with that burrow. And it looks like, Serral's going to clean this up, actually. All the tanks got taken down except this one on the back lines, who was just not part of the fight anyways. But the Medivacs once again doing their job, lifting and leaving, 14 of them, by the way, so healing has been consistent. However, do we have enough units to now heal? This is just one hell of a slobber knocker, man. The tank not going to be able to siege up before the Roach Ravager descends upon it. Now we do have all 3 tanks sieged up and in good position as well. Serral will not be able to crack that, especially with the amount of bio that has now been accumulated. All those are the reinforcements dealing with the run by. Of course, the Planetary really is the godsend here. You do not have to worry about that so much being attacked. Even without detection, if the Roaches pop up, you need quite a number of them to actually kill a Planetary. 2 medevac drops now, heading over into that very important 5th base. Not going to find too many drones by the looks of things, but a lot of overlords, actually. And Serral's that rich on minerals, man. This is not a typical late-game TvZ. This has been so back and forth that each overlord kill could actually be quite problematic. Speaking of overlords, a lurker in the main base, not going to find much success. Clem on it as fast as he possibly can be, but the bio has now left the tanks, well, a little alone. The tanks are still covering themselves to a certain degree, but this could have been a lot better if the bio was around. Now racing over to try and handle this. The Ravagers accidentally got burrowed. That was not the intention. I am pretty sure about that. The bio is now here with their +3 attack, their +3 armor shortly to finish, and the Roach Ravager composition has been on 2-1 for the past, 5 minutes because of the snipe in the main base. Speaking of which, we got the Medivacs going back in there. That's a lot of open space that just something that Serral can't get back to establishing. Clem has won out in this just slugfest of a TvZ. He is so more solid back at home, and the army quality that he has is so great. Serral apparently lost his lurker den at some point. No idea when that happened, but he was never going to get those upgrades anyway without... Oh, no, his hive actually is done. So to be fair, he could have started those upgrades, but Now does have a lurker den, so it's not one thing, it's another. The hatchery is going to go down, and 2 medevacs will still be able to escape. Serral, how much is he even mining at this point? Basically nothing. I'm surprised he has over 1,000 as I'm looking. I guess his 5th base did go back to mining, but he is going to acknowledge he cannot keep up. Jeez Louise. What a match. What a match. I wasn't expecting this. This is my first cast of the day, so I'm not so warmed up, but whoo. Ah, damn. Probably one of the best TvZs of this year. That was so incredibly interesting from start to finish. Damn. All right, I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. Let's get into it. Game number 2 on Dragon Scales. In the bottom right, we have Clem. In the top left, it is Serral. Woo, 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 woo. Like I said, interesting start to finish. We had both of them going for interesting openers. Serral going for what is now apparently more typical, especially for him, so maybe we'll stop calling that interesting, but I'd say still, we're close enough to the usual meta being that, you know, 18, 17, 16, 18, yeah. That one, that I would still call this interesting. And then Clem might have started with a 1 racks expand, but has then gone into the 3 racks, right? Which I really didn't think was all that successful. I thought Serral's roach play, that was blind, by the way. I don't think it wasn't a response. He was just going to do that on the map. I thought was really going to put him in a comfortable position, but Clem handled the surprise roach burrow tactics so much better than I anticipated. I know Clem's good, don't get me wrong, but that was a surprising maneuver. I wasn't aware to catch whether or not he saw the Tunneling Claws upgrade, so that might have helped. But nonetheless, the fact that the roaches got into almost every single base with the drop helping out usually means that even the best Terrans screw up to a larger degree at some place, at some location, and that just didn't really happen for Clem. The biggest screw up that he did was absolutely the main attack path tank loss. Whereas tanks were at siege, he absolutely could have taken a better engagement. But yeah, the point is, like, and then you basically can recap that entire thing. There's no point in which you're like, well, then nothing happened for 6 minutes. You got into the Doom drop, you got into the wacky base trade kind of scenario. If Clem had ever gotten his 4th CC canceled and it was more of a struggle to get his planetary up, that would have drastically affected how good that game went for him. I mean, it was crazy. Oof. But now we have a 2 racks opener from Clem. As I said, he has been doing this more often lately, and even though this is a little bit of an older replay, it definitely is still after the fact that he's been starting to experiment with this. So, you know, I think clearly that last game was kind of a, how do you say, like, keeping your opponent at ease with the 1 racks expand, only to actually be doing something very interesting and aggressive that Clem would not be particularly well known for. He is absolutely more likely, up until about August of this year, to be going for 3 CC. Absolutely. And instead, he's going all for these, like, 2 base builds and, you know, little clever things, like putting his high ground command center so that this could look like a potential 3 racks to Serral. Now, Serral actually gets his overlord in the main base, basically double checking that this is actually an expansion and not a 3 racks, which is great, but then might cost him the overlord, as Clem actually does bother to produce marines instead of going directly into tech lab and reactor. I don't know if the overlord's actually going to die. I mean, another marine is on the way. The reapers obviously control the map, so no fear of losing the marines. And there's no clever overlord position. Yeah, no, this is dead. It's dead. If it was another game where the reapers aren't out, you know, it's a little more, the lings go try and sacrifice themselves or something like that, but no, the reapers are here. Speaking of which, they're going to get into the main base and kill 1 drone. Actually, mismicroed the wrong drone. It's a 2-base lair? What? Yeah, and Serral's also playing wacky. Okay, then that overlord did die. Nowhere near protection. Clem did, as I said, sacrifice timing on his tech lab and his reactor to do that, but it's pretty worth it to blind the Zerg player for the foreseeable future. Stim is on the way, factory is done, starport soon to come as well, as he goes up to a 2-1-1 off of 2 bases, but he's also adding on a 3rd CC actually, so, you know, middle 2 bases, I guess. Roaches and a lair on 2 bases. Serral has experimented with this prior to the, I know, the month here. He's experimented previously with such more even like ZvZ openers. He's done this in ZVP, and I have seen him do it in ZVT, and he has been cheesy against some players. So this is not necessarily all that surprising, I suppose, but the stereotype for Serral would absolutely be that he's so confident in the macro game that he would win that no matter what. He doesn't have to open up any interesting new ways, but clearly thinking that he has to. So the Reaper is able to kill a queen, a drone. The Overlord obviously went down. This is the last Reaper in play, and it might get another drone. No, not quite. But obviously it's seen the lair. It knows of its intention. There is no speed on the way, never has been, so it should be a Roachborn, which he also was able to scout, and a later third base, but a far more well-protected one. Now, Clem should be pretty happy that he's not going into, for instance, a 3 or 4 racks, which Serral doesn't know and is probably wary about. He absolutely has no idea as to what the follow-up is. For all he knows, it could be follow-up mech. Overseer does get in, and that's certainly a benefit of the faster layers, faster scouting, 3rd CC, 2-on-1. He has all the information at this point in time, but it looks like Clem is quite wary of the possibility of a Roach bust, which is a possible play from the 2-base lair. Obviously, it would be quite dedicated. I would say usually accompanied by a Nidus Worm, but it's something that he is wary of. So he's building a bunker, not bothering with a wall, and why not? You know, speed isn't here, and Roaches aren't nearly as threatening if they go for a run by, although they tried to prove differently in the last game. Clem is going to take the map control with his 2 medivacs. He has to be wary against Roaches like you would in a more normal game, which is that if the Roaches are powering up for a big attack, a big punch to the face, you don't want to have your medivacs flying around, unloading in the midst of battle. But presumably, as the Reaper even gets a little bit more scouting, actually, this is probably going to be safe for a little while longer. You know, eventually there might be a push, sure. But this is pretty safe to do as long as you have the micro, and Clem certainly does. Overseer still being a pain. It's probably going to contaminate something. Tank on the high ground, very, very wary of any amount of Roaches coming across the map. I really like this setup because there's basically no reason not to. You know? If you have a tank at home, why not siege it up somewhere really nice? If you are afraid of potential attack or a clever little maybe tunneling claws play again, why not get that bunker? 3rd CC lands, but you can see that even the army isn't really going over to protect it. It's kind of willing to lift at any point, since it's not saturated anyway. And Clem is, I mean, he's playing some smart StarCraft here. Serral's the one that's really trying to be a little more cunning, a little more like subverting expectations here. All right, he's some like, you know, edgy filmmaker. He's trying to do something different, but it's just not really working. Clem playing smart, absolutely smart. All right then. Well, we'll see what Serral can do. He's once again going into the same play, you know, different opener, but same play. And it felt like close to working, close to just pushing Clem as much as necessary off his balance to really start to snowball. But like I had really given a lot of credit to Clem for, was that it barely didn't. He was able to handle every single attack as patiently and calmly as possible. And then identified a rather, it was a gamble, I would say, the Doom drop, yes, but it was a pretty smart gamble. One that was probably better, was probably going to work more than it was going to fail, you know? But yeah, it was close to being enough. If Serral can actually get something that really throws Clem off this time around, we'll see the effects of the snowball. So here we go again. Deja vu. Game number 2, we got Roaches in the main base. Attempted Roach in the natural, not working out so far, and Roaches primarily bearing down on the 3rd base, and that bunker was hardly used at all, and it's really only 1 tank protecting the command center itself, but this 1 on the high ground, 2 on the high ground, excuse me, will take care of the Roaches as soon as they go any closer. For instance, to actually kill this tank or actually kill these Marines. Missile turret will detect the high ground Roaches. So far, so good. The handling of this is looking okay, but Clem is a little low on that bio. The tank number is beautiful, but the bio that actually kind of protects the tanks is a little more in question, especially as it has been scurrying around trying to deal with all of the tunneling claws play. Well, the tanks really did cover. That was quite the fight for Serral to even get that 1 tank killed, and even though he didn't have to trade too many Roaches for it, it was kind of a matter of the time issue. All that time that Serral isn't breaking any of these defenses means that Clem is obviously building up to a better army with better upgrades and more army, right? Whereas Serral really isn't maxing out all that quickly. He's on 73 drones, 4 bases at this point in time, but only now saturating his 4th and really having that kind of offset beginning that was kind of awkward. He is also not all-inning on Roach Ravager, so he's grabbing 2-2, he's grabbing Infestors and a Hive, so it was Clem who decided to buy that little bit of time that he did, and then he is A-okay, and at this point he's probably identified as well. You know, probably even before he got out on the map again, that this is actually not being committed to. If it was, there'd be a lot more roaches trying to hit, you know, multiple locations or get a bigger concave or what have you. So he knows what's up, and he is once again going to go for his 4th base as he continues to drop into the main. This time, not so much a doom drop. A quad drop, still very scary, and the Roach Ravager has to be careful by not coming in here single file, but it will be good enough. Queens also trying to help out, but there's only 3 of them, so injects could be a problem, and not a whole lot of anti-air, which did cause some problems in the last game. Oh, that's a good fungal. That is a good fungal on top of Clem's army. He's still able to pick up 3/4 of it, literally. 3 medevacs almost full of units heading into the main base. A little late to being controlled, however, as Clem is distracted by roaches going into his natural as well as his main base. Serral willing to accept their losses. It's just a matter of how much time they buy, how much chaos they create, as the roaches are now getting, you know, relatively cheap. Serral is now starting to really bank a lot and being able to remax quite quickly, but the 5 tanks on this high ground is certainly a pesky area to be. One Infestor almost taken down, not quite. No Marauder slow for the Marauder that could have taken it down. Burrow not really working out here as the tanks are just continuing to shell away. But Serral does manage to, I guess, cross the gap here. That was the main concern for him, to actually now protect his base. He's got nothing more clever, really, than Roach Ravager. The Hydra's adding some DPS as well, but oh yeah, the Burrow could actually be problematic. Yeah, I was wondering how they were seeing it. That was just one roach that wasn't burrowed. Yeah, they don't see this at all. This is going to be a perfect pounce on top of the tanks. All of them shooting at each other as well. Actually, only 1 tank that got destroyed. There we go. 2 tanks. 3. There we go. Okay, starting to get dwindling. And now the roaches also starting to kill a lot of SCVs back in the natural. Clem apparently thought that he'd clean things up, but he did not. And 19 SCVs have gone down, as well as most of his tanks. He's down to 4. Still an okay number. But definitely a big hit there, a bit of a 1-2 punch from Serral, as he did manage to keep his 4th base alive. It wasn't mining for a little bit, but it is alive. He had built up a bit of a bank before that happened and is now actually even patiently waiting to turn that bank into lurkers by the looks of things. Yep, there it is. Not a lot of gas is the main problem as he reestablishes his 8th, I can do math, and it also gets his 5th base up, which he'll probably get the gases there too. And this has been so annoying for Clem. This has really offset him more, just that little bit extra compared to last game that really makes me believe that Serral can actually win this game. The fact that he's getting 2 lurkers in a non-desperate position with his hive intact and getting to the upgrades, that's so much better, because that really is the stopping force of a game like this. When things are getting a little bit screwy, when the Terran has that big mid-game momentum and they have their powerful upgrades, right? The bio is just looking awfully scary. Hive is great. Viper's obviously a great solution for the tanks, but then lurkers really force a different style of play. You can't just try and use your momentum to overrun the Zerg player. They plant a couple of lurkers defensively with both upgrades, and then you really have to think long and hard about how you defeat those lurkers. Of course, until you have ghosts, but even then, if ghosts, you know, are okay, well, you just snipe them and then we're good, right? You still have to really think about how you're going to engage and not be pounced upon. You don't want to get fungled, obviously, and you don't want to be split too badly with such a force, because it's really about having that critical mass. It just changes things. It changes things, right? So the lurkers were missing that in the last game. They were coming at a very desperate time. They didn't have their upgrades, so they couldn't really be the stopping force that Serral needed to calm things down, get his bases back, and then reestablish a max supply. This time around, he's there, man. He's there on 5 bases. He's dealing with the drops relatively well. He's still distracting his opponent, and in fact, distracting him with a big old lurker drop into the main base. That's quite the concave that Clem has tried to set up here, and it might just be good enough. The barracks blocking a little bit, but it looks like it is. But you don't want to be taking that type of fight. Even if the concave is beautiful there, that's still too much of a cost there, as Clem's supply has plummeted, as his SCVs were also taken down. Serral will, in fact, win game number 2. Similar tactics, but this time around, really doing, I think, the goal, which is to offset the Terran, interrupt the momentum, and then get to that ultimate composition, especially faster than Clem got to his ultimate composition, which includes Ghost. He was just about to get there if he had been given an extra minute, and he had 6 Ghosts. Well, those are the things that respond to the main base. The bio stays around the front, protects the tanks a little bit more, and we see perhaps more of a back and forth late game TvZ, but that kind of ended up going maybe even exactly what Serral was hoping for. And That was off the back of a bit more of an awkward opener, too. But it worked out. Yeah, Serral is pretty freaking good, man. Clem not able to stop the snowball that time around, so tie it up 1-1 in this best of 5. Heading to Royal Blood for Game 3. In the bottom left, it is Basilisk's Serral. And in the top right, Team Liquid's Clem. Little Lem polar bear, it's so cute. Mwah. I don't know what made him do this, but I'm glad he's kept it. So Serral's really playing some particular style of ZVT. He is really insistent upon the roach. He's obviously insistent about this 15-15 opener. Clem able to handle things just good enough, really, in the first game, and then just quite not good enough in the second game. I really feel like both of those games come down to not one particular moment that I can highlight, but one particular attack doing just enough so that the next attack does just enough so the next attack buys just enough time. You know, it's maybe a slow snowball at first, but then you can really see the effects of it when the Terran player doesn't have the defenses against lurkers. And then you're like, oh, okay, all right, okay. I guess you're screwed, sorry. But, you know, up until those lurkers arrived, if the lurker didn't exist, let's say it that way, if the lurker didn't exist, that same game cannot be played in that way, I would say. Clem would have enough time to establish his fourth, get his ghosts, and then, you know, play out that late game Terran however he would desire, so either a bit more turtley or still aggressive. More Mara versus more Beyond. Clem being more Beyond most of the time. Oh, and going for a proxy third. Haha, cheeky. I really like that they're both playing such vastly different TvZ. If you give us a Clem versus Serral a year ago, it's really, it's a best of 5, again, consisting of mostly 3 CCs from Clem and mostly Ling Baneling from Serral. And it's mid-game is action-packed for sure, but you kind of get a little bored maybe the first 6 minutes. But they are just all about messing things up here. Clem going for the actual 3 racks, which if we recall, he faked doing in the last game. He put his high ground, command center on the high ground, so that if the Overlord only checked the natural, it would be like, oh shit, that's not a command center. Oh gee, golly gee blicker. That must be a 3rd rack somewhere. But then the Overlord got into the main and was able to see the command center. In this case, the Overlord is going to have to, before it really figures out what is actually going on, it's going to have to scout everywhere. Because what if the command center is over here? Not likely. The Terran player often puts it closest to where it's going to go, right? But it could be. So really, the first sign that Serral's going to get is when 3 Reapers are much faster than they should be. Like, oh, okay, yeah, gotcha. Now, his opener was, once again, in that faster start here for the Zerg. So this is theoretically a better start for him to deflect the Reaper opener. But Reapers, well, they do snowball, don't they? We've seen Clem win with this straight up against the likes of other great Zergs like Lambo. To be fair, Lambo did mess up his queen control, I would say. He let 1 queen take the brunt of the damage, and that was enough. Even though he like kind of pulled it back, it was enough. Now here, Serral is trying to make sure both are fighting at the same time, trying to target fire the Reapers, finally gets a successful kill, another successful kill as well. Now that is 2 Reapers for 2 queens. And the queens do take a lot longer to build up, but it means that there's not that 5 Reaper presence here right now, which could tear down this queen no problem and then work on the other ones, and then perhaps even work on the roaches that Serral's actually trying to get to solidify his game. And once he gets into a couple of roaches, ideally, you do start to stabilize, but that's not guaranteed. Not if the Reapers continue to snowball, and it kind of feels like they are anyway. 2 queen kills for 2 Reapers is still just so devastating for the Zerg player. You know, they don't get time to build up transfuses. No spine crawler was ever made. 2 more queens went down, guys. 3rd one is looking to die as well. A total of 3 queens killed for, again, 3 Reapers, and 1 produces faster, especially with 1 proxied. Serral's going to be in a lot of trouble, even as he finally gets to maybe enough roaches, actually. The queens did die, but the roaches did not, so they're starting to also reach that critical mass. That's a good news. But then Zerg player on 2 base economy who's been building mostly roaches to stop their opponent's snowball is just much worse off than the Terran player doing something similar, because Terran players can produce SCVs and army at the same time. Magical. And that is what we call asymmetrical balance, guys. So Serral is in a lot of trouble, and Clem knows that he's in a lot of trouble, and there's really only 2 options. A desperate play into a macro game, which would be incredibly difficult, as these Reapers, as mobile as they are, can either stop the 3rd hatch from coming down or backstab, you know, go into the drone line at any point with the roaches out of position. Or, since that doesn't sound very possible, you go for an all-in, which also will not work, to be clear. But, oh, that is a great maneuver right there. Shit, I wasn't even thinking about that. Serral actually trying to get a little bit of a sandwich going on, but such slow units, very difficult to do. It's still better than nothing. The Reaper's now racing home, but this is what I was talking about. Clem identified that this would probably be the only way that Serral could play this out. He's been building Marauders. His concussive shell is done. Now, his bunker isn't, but the Reapers did survive a potential sandwich, so the Reaper grenades are buying time. And there'll be considerable amounts of damage and crowd control for the actual defense. So overall, I'm pretty sure that Clem still has this, but that late bunker is the only concern. Fortunately, the SCV does dodge out of the corrosive bile at the last second, so finishes the bunker. 2 Marauders jump in it, get that extra range as well. And while the Reapers did mostly die, so much for the grenades helping out, the bunker will live. Okay, yes, it will live. Very close to not living. Woof. But now more Ravages are on the way. Eventually, Serral will reach a one-shot on the bunker. But will he have enough to overcome the bunker and whatever else has been built in that time? That is a different issue. A Banshee, for instance, would be devastating for Serral, and that is on the way. If he could get into the SCV lines, one Banshee might not be enough, and that's what he's trying to do here as he races forward. He killed the bunker. He's looking to kill more of the Marauders here, but the SCVs hold positioning, blocking the Roaches from jumping on top of the rest of the bio is a wonderful maneuver there from Clem. The rest of the bio will eventually fall. The numbers of the Zerg was particularly great, but the Banshee is here to help out, and it's all about saving enough SCVs to still say, I will win this game. It is 29 SCVs to 28 so far, but the Roaches are now in both mineral lines. We're starting to lack a lot of those units on the actual ground here for Clem, but the SCVs now pulled into the action aren't terrible against Roaches. It's not preferable, but they aren't terrible, and it looks like with 25 SCVs still alive, Serral has not quite done the damage that he needs. 2 barracks still in play, 3, sorry, actually. Although maybe not for very long. Okay, 2 barracks in play. 21 SCVs overall killed, but Clem producing while this was going on. SCVs has managed to keep his head above water. 26 SCVs to 28 drones, with 2 mules being dropped. The magical ability of a Terran player to produce both economy and army. Serral did not do enough damage to really make up for the early game, especially as his third base might still be in trouble as far as being set down, thanks to the Banshee now on the other side of the map. Now, this is a cloakless Banshee. Clem didn't really want to go into Banshees as much as he identified that there would be a counterattack and all-in coming his way. But it still is something that the Queens might not be able to chase down if they don't have creep. A little bit further delay on a third hatch, if Serral is actually trying to macro, would be huge in a game like this. But he's not trying to macro, is he? He is still going to go for the all-in. Nidus Swarm is on the way, still off of 27 drones. Clem, meanwhile, built up to 34 SCVs. His third CC is on the way. That's not a particularly good sign, actually. Stim's not halfway done. This Swarm actually could work. It would have to jump on top of the tank, though, and that's pretty much impossible. That tank is going to be crucial. It's even well protected against such a Nidus Swarm. Marina's going to check around for it and then maybe even rolling his eyes at this point. Like, yeah, of course he would. That's the best maneuver Serral's got, though. That's why he's doing it. The third CC might... No, that actually won't even be destroyed, honestly. It's not worth it to go for the cancel there. The tank did on siege. It was going to try and get a little bit closer. Oh, second tank pops out on the wrong side of the party. And the first tank is going to get jumped upon a little bit. Yeah, the corrosive bile is going to come down on that, tear it down. The bio count perhaps not big enough to help out here. SCVs once again having to be pulled, but it is all about, once again, just the survival. And that Banshee is coming in clutch as the Queens are starting to be taken down here. One transfuse over is very, very helpful. The Banshee getting targeted. The SCV is starting to fall in huge numbers. And this is not over quite yet. Serral, does he have any more reinforcements? That's the real kicker. He has such a low economy back at home that reinforcing this is almost impossible. Every Ravager kill is also absolutely devastating, and we still have 3 production, I guess now 3 productions worth of barracks, and that's going to be enough, it looks like. Simic finished up, the Banshee's still barely alive, and more SCVs can be pulled into the action, believe it or not. An 8 SCV difference is not enough for Serral to play a macro game, and it looks like things will be cleaned up. Nidus Swarm number 2 is going to fall, number 1 will also fall, and Serral is now without any options. That third CC was not canceled. No production was killed in that engagement. The SCVs go back to mining happily, and the Banshee's even still alive to make sure no cheeky Nidus Swarm number 3 comes up. You know, Nidus Swarm number 3 pops out 4 roaches, and suddenly you are being attacked on 2 different sides. Maybe the number of SCV kills can you know, I'm grasping at straws here. Like, it could happen, but this Banshee's gonna make sure that never happens. Clem can focus entirely on protecting his natural, which is still a numbers issue, potentially, but I think his numbers are good enough. 2 medevacs, stimmed bio. Banshee, realizing all the action is at the front, comes over to help as well. No queens involved here. And if Serral had been able to get up to, let's say, more like 40 drones, or, well, let's say like 35 drones and a third hatch, which is a lot to ask for. If he had been able to do that after that last Nidus Storm attack, he might be able to play macro out of this. But, you know, that's asking for a bit much. That Banshee is so close to death. This one queen's about to be a hero. And that tank siege up on the natural ramp is going to be pretty bad to work against. It's the main ramp. I've called it a natural ramp this entire time. I don't know why I picked up that habit, but the main ramp, so it's untouchable at this point. Third medevac gonna help out a bunker as well. Banshee gets repaired up. There's 2 queens on the front lines now, to be fair, but if the Banshee can still kind of just run on the outskirts of the queen range, well, there you go. They pop a Ravager. Clem is not going to be foolhardy in his defense. He waited a good amount of time for all of that bio to mass up, and Serral recognizes there is no hope anymore, so he will tap out. And out Clem will lead the series 2-1. In the bottom left of what could potentially be the last game of this best-of-5 series, we have a Basilisk's Serral. In the top right, we do have Team Liquid's Clem. This was the upper bracket, so there's actually a second chance here in this tournament. Coliseum, number 6. For Serral, if he does lose here, but if he loses, that will still nonetheless be another feather in Clem's hat. He is rather good against the best Zergs when it comes to online play. Still struggles offline. Unfortunately, not able to beat Raynor in Gamers 8, for instance, but then Raynor was having probably the best performance of his career. Raynor took that very seriously. He was going Super Saiyan 3 in that tournament. Or Clem finally broke the Korean Terran Maru stopper curse, only to be met by the almighty Raynor. Online, he generally does win against the likes of Serral and Raynor, and the other Zergs that would be apparent, like Lambo. He's starting to win more against Dark. Dark's kind of tripped him up, to be fair. A laser he wins against. Ragnarok, I think, also might have tripped him, but Ragnarok's kind of in a weird area right now. I didn't make it in GSL. And then I'm having trouble thinking of other Zergs, I'm going to be honest. Usually beat Scarlet. Like, the number of Zergs that are available for tournaments is been at a very low amount for a couple of years at this point, actually. It's kind of bizarre, having lived a lot of the Zerg dominance era of StarCraft 2. I keep thinking, what did I do wrong? Have I not been casting all that much StarCraft? Why can't I think of a bunch of Zergs? And then I remember, like, oh, right, there's not really all that many that appear. Anyway. The ones that we have are pretty freaking good. And Clem usually beats them. He was beating them with a good old-fashioned macro game and micro and aggression, and it was pretty impressive. But now, definitely mixing things up. Serral, ditto, of course. He's really mixing things up. Was forced into the all-in last game, to be fair. That was not necessarily his decision, but nonetheless, this whole best of 5 has been a lot of nice block right there. There's been a lot of Clem doing something different, and Serral doing something different, and occasionally clashing on those different things for some really explosive results, like that game number 1. Clem with the SCV Scout uses it to also help body block the third hatch, which is just an excellent use of an SCV Scout. I think he SCV Scouted in another game in this best of 5. I think he just is wary of Serral being cheesy, not just in a Roach all-in type of game in the mid-game, but rather maybe an opener. But then you can use that SCV Scout that might have scouted something totally normal to even build a bunker sometimes. Not the plan here, of course, for Clem, but he did deny that third hatch for a little bit. Other one came down the right side regardless. Clem is going into a pretty normal build, actually, if we are still calling this normal after the 2 racks has taken hold of the TvZ meta, which is into a third CC after 1 racks expand into a 1-1-1, but it is going to be Hellions Medevac, maybe? Oh, that's not a starport. Oh, my goodness. I'd like to say it's early for me, but it really isn't. That's not a starport. Hey, I've been bamboozled. So it's 3cc211. So the Hellions here are just that little amount of protection for a very greedy build. The starport could at very least give you a Banshee, which is that added layer of protection. But when you go into that second barracks for this 211 third CC, which really was for so long Clem's bread and butter, you are incredibly vulnerable to the early game. Incredibly. The Hellions are here to protect you against a low number of speedlings, which this time around, Serral did get speed, but then also to be an additional scouts in case the Reaper can't do the entire job. At the very least, the Hellions can stay on the outer edges of the creep and hopefully see, for instance, roaches coming along the way. What do you do if there are roaches on the way? Tech lab in the factory, bunker up, and pray. But that's not happening, is it? Serral is trying to play out a macro game. One of the more typical ones that we've seen from him, just straight into those lings, bunch of drones, 3 hatch, no problem. He does not know what his opponent's up to. There we go. He does, actually. He was able to get in there and see that it is a 211 after 3cc, so he'll know the exact timing of the double medevac drop as well. 5:30, basically. And Serral is theoretically very set here for his macro game. But then so is Clem. They both had the shaken hands, gentlemen's agreements. And now we get to see if Clem can just win with his first 2 medevac drops, which a while ago he was winning. Just with that. Same as Bjorn. Bjorn also had a period where he would win with the first 2 medevac drops, but it's been a while. Doesn't usually happen anymore. Especially not against Serral. But sometimes... Banliness is on the way. Lair is going to finish up and allow centrifugal focus to be started ASAP. This does mean that Serral will not have particularly fast upgrades, but he will be well protected against, well, the first medevac drop is usually not an issue. The second potential, whatever follow-up it is, might be. Third CC is on the way to producing. There we go. A little bit of a supply block there from Clem. Whoopsie-daisy. He's not going to go for a drop. He's going to race across the map. Medevac's providing the high ground vision to kill any overlords. That's exactly what Clem was looking for. Wasn't expecting very much from the Marines by the looks of things. You could try and gamble a little bit more and send it, for instance, right into the main base. Very unlikely to work against the best Zergs, though. That is enough Queens, with transfuses, and the knowledge that Lings certainly will be somewhere on the map for Clem not to engage. Not really. The Lings are going to go ahead and set up for a surround by the looks of things, but they could also go for a run-by. Unbeknownst to Serral, this would be a perfect opportunity. Not enough protection over there, but a little more worried about what's coming on his side of the map. Baneling speed did start up lickety splits 1-1 finally as well. Not too far behind Clem's own 1-1, but it's the picking and choosing that Zerg has to do here. And Serral's up to 67, about to be 69. Nice drones. Trying to protect his 4 bases from what is still mostly just the single double medevac drop. But the Hellions are a little bit of a distraction by the looks of things, just for a half a second. That Clem wasn't able to get into the drone line to massacre any of these poor little workers. You know, they got a feel for workers, you know? They're just trying to do their job. Why go after them? Much sad. Second factor on the way for Clem back at home as he is just macroing up here. Both players pretty much getting into that mid-game TvZ as Serral adds on a fairly fast infestation pit slightly before Centrifugal Hooks is even done. So that could be a very fast hive. I'd be surprised if he added fungals to this composition. In fact, I'm basically kind of surprised if any Zerg still does that really quickly, which is why I like Dark so much. He's pretty dependably fast on the infestors, but Serral was doing that too in the recent games, but that was with roaches. Might not be heading it into the Ling Baneling. The Marine spread here is good. The tanks are in that abusive position, trying to crawl forward as Serral also sets up a surround. He's definitely trying to take the best engagement possible. His upgrades are nowhere near completed, however, and that's a big problem as the Marines continue to bear down on the 4th base. The Baneling number is looking a little bit low. Now he runs back into more Banelings. This was the setup here for Serral, which will be good enough to send the Terran packing. It was a little concerning without those upgrades, but Serral, with the positioning, was able to survive. He's got to use his transfuses to heal up that hatchery, which was very close to death. And unfortunately, Clem did not have to leave very far. He is back in on the front lines, continuing to clear up that creep, which wasn't even really reestablished. And what he is missing is absolutely tanks or widow mines. He is very low on the AoE right now. But he still wants to hold on to the pressure, wants to make sure that Serral doesn't get too comfortable. And with the Marines off of creep, that will be good enough to do that. Serral is, like I said, going up to that hive. We could have I mean, hive technology fairly quickly, but I'm worried about, you know, are we going to have enough units for the use of the hive technology? The classic question. Clem's 3CC has been set up for a while, protected by a tank on the high ground, 4CC on the way, sensor tower as well, and now splitting his army in 2 different directions, hoping to overwhelm in one particular area. Wouldn't mind. Gonna be dragged in. Oh, that was still a good hit, actually. I thought it was gonna be dragged more effectively onto the Marines. It was not. Not enough medevac space to pick up all the Marines, to be fair, but that wouldn't mind got, I think that's literally 18 lings. Pretty good. It's pretty good for, you know, what was initially just targeting 1. Finally cleans it up, but this is... It's only gonna get worse. Overseer of Serral is gonna bypass SCVs mining from a 4th, knowing that the 4th base itself will soon be down and not being able to do much about it. No stopping on Clem's macro. His 2-2 still remains fairly far ahead of Serral's as he starts up 2-2 with Adrenal Glands, basically. Guarding against a drop in the main base at the very least, but it's Wood of Mine drops that are now coming into play, which he might not be quick enough to respond to, as Drilling Claws will be done. Oh, nowhere close to being soon, just kidding. But eventually they will be. 8 racks is now up and powered, or just about here for Clem, off of 4 bases, as he continues to try and pressure both sides of the map. More Wood of Mines coming into play as well, going to cause further issues for Serral. There's still 1 locked and loaded that Clem can run back to exactly what he is doing, and it's not going to be a particularly good shot, so a pickup is going to have to happen here. But a pickup is easy enough, and no punish on a pickup either without the Viper Parasitic Bomb or the Queens being able to chase. Obviously no mutas, not much in the meta anymore. And Serral will continually have these problems, only able to get his creep out so far before the Marines come back in, but finally Clem messes up. He was looking somewhere else for a hot second, loses the pressure on the left side of the map. Serral able finally to breathe a little bit, but Wood of Mine drops do come in, with Drilling Claws finally done as well. Handling it like a pro so far, but it's only one mistake that's gonna cause you 20 drones. Classic Wood of Mine things. So far, so good. So far, so good. So far, so good. Oh! So far, so good. 5th base on the way for Clem as his 3-3 starts up. Serral trying to get to some Hydras and probably looking towards Lurkers. Once again, they're a stopping force. They really stop this type of Terran if you can get to a certain number of them with their upgrades. But unlike that previous game number 2, that is, the Ghost will be very well timed. Clem has really been in control of this game. He still has a lot of army on the front lines, even as the Banelings do kill some of those Wood of Mines. He's got 10 in total. That is a nice number. Viper finally getting a Parasitic Bomb, and there's a lot of low health medevacs, but good micro from Clem. Does not get the boom, boom, boom on 3 or 4 of these. That's what Serral was hoping for. That's his only Viper, too. Wood of Mines do get taken down again. Good use of Banelings. Serral really trying to make do with what he's got. But a Liberator even now causing some problems. Ling run by with Banelings going to try and disrupt Clem's momentum, but not going to work out. Now with the number of Wood of Mines that Clem has kept back at home with his tank as well. Back on the front lines, controlling this as well as he possibly can. Liberator was taken down. One less thing to worry about for Serral. And now the Queens can also more comfortably start microing against the medevacs themselves, which are still very low. Parasitic Bomb. Oh, nice micro there from Clem. I don't think Serral was expecting it. He didn't manage to get this Parasitic Bomb off, but medevac was once again microed away. Most of them survive, and this is not going to lead to very much more, unfortunately, as Clem has that planetary fortress to safely retreat back to. Plus, he was attacking on the left side as well. He kind of just threw the units at the last second. This is a little bit haphazard, but it's going to be good enough. Serral forced to respond to this, is now looking to clean it up since the medevacs are all gone, but Clem, with the maneuver there, is able to throw those units onto the map, distract Serral, unload the army on the right side, and keep the army on the left side alive. I mean, if he had sacrificed this, I would have talked about some of the trades and how that might still have been worth it, but he didn't. Like, this is actually going wonderfully for Clem. And it wouldn't have been worth it, actually, because, again, that planetary was the hold for Clem's right side. He is still able to take over the map, now combining forces as well. His own medevac did just go down to Wood of Mine, to be fair, but that is so much bio. Where the Banelings finally coming forth, and that was weakened bio as well, so the Lings are able to take down what was not yet 3-3 bio too, so kind of a good enough timing for Serral there. He's trying to hold on still. His supply is looking okay. His bank is looking okay as well, but the Lurkers took so long to get to. The Lurker Den only now beginning. Clem also finally on that 3-3. Forgot Martyr Slow. Oh, nope, it's on the way. Usually not the most important thing, but still. And the medevac count is still very healthy. The Medivacs themselves might be healthy, but the Vipers are not in play quite yet. I think they're still soaking up some juice. Here they come now. Gonna go for a Parasitic Bomb and an Abduct. If I had to guess, Widowmine's gonna pop off. Not super effectively. That one was nice. And one more Viper still looking for that Parasitic Bomb. Not gonna be able to find it. Clem does back away in time, and once again has a second force. She's going to be thrown across the map, also setting up a 6th base planetary. Is that, yeah, 4th, 5th, and 6th as planetaries. He could also start working on the upgrades for the buildings as well to further solidify his defenses. He's got +2 armor for his Medivacs and Widowmines, by the way, and going up to +3. Not something I think you'd usually see, but yeah, okay. And Marauder's always leading the charge, making sure that they can run away as well. Back to the safety of Widowmines and again a planetary. Clem is just all over this map. Serral not really able to make a move on the counter-offensive. He did attempt once, but it failed. And unless he can get those lurkers in play and start taking more cost-efficient engagements, he will eventually run out of juice, especially if this base cannot be gotten. Clem has a Widowmine over to the top left to make sure that Serral isn't sneaky-deaky getting the base up and running, and so can focus most of his efforts on his own attacks. There's no run by interrupting him. There's no bases that he's forgetting to account for. Clem is all over this. Fusion cores on the way. Second starport, additional command centers to turn into orbitals, building armor, and high-sec auto tracking. There you go. And Ghosts also have been producing this entire time. 4 of them already here. Widowmine still getting some sneaky shots every now and again. Lurkers are in play, but they do not have any of their upgrades, and the number is abysmal. Not particularly impressive, can get concaved on pretty easily. Ghost on the left side. Have to be careful about being overwhelmed, but they can always pick up. Oh, and the weakest Medivac is a little concerning. But good enough, apparently. The lurkers were killed to the bottom right, and the Medivac just picked up and headed towards the corner base as Clem successfully defends the attack over on the left. Ancient Cistern is really just Clem's playground, and Serral is the one that's being, basically, he's trying to follow Clem's lead. He's not the lead in this particular dance, but all it takes is one moment, one lapse of concentration for Clem to lose control of an avenue of attack, and suddenly he will have the Zerg just running rampant on his side of the map. Perhaps this is one of those openings, as it looks like Clem acknowledges he cannot defend, does not have enough over on the right side. One planetary does fall at the cost of quite a few banelings, but Serral still with enough bank, enough economy to say that is okay to sacrifice. Especially if that's the domino that leads to the next domino. And that was a wise pull away from Clem. He didn't try and fight it and then make things worse. He's got expansions up the top left anyway, and fights the top left as well. Serral still kind of being led by the nose, but it's a testament to how good he is that he survived this long. Unfortunately, this base is going to fall. 300 minerals down the drain. Well, Serral's not lacking for minerals currently. He might eventually. Widowmine's popping off. One more in play. Is going to go for more friendly fire than anything else. Exactly. EMP hits the Viper's missile turret. Helps to take them down as well. And that is simply not enough Zerg to warrant going off of creep into a planetary. Serral is forced to retreat, which Clem is going to happily chase after, and now actually directing all of his efforts to the left side of the map, kind of abandoning that right side attack, which means that Serral might be able to do something further to perhaps this would-be command center, for instance, but can he get anything more than that? I'm not so sure. I think he needs more army. He's going to bypass the planetary entirely. One lurker for harassment, lings in through the natural. That would be the ideal situation, but enough reinforcements will perhaps stop that. And Clem actually raising the supply depot as well, but SCVs are under attack. Serral starting to get those little pinpricks, just that little bit of mess up on the momentum to finally get something set on the other side of the map, and that can lead to the next thing that leads to the next thing. But Clem's still pretty solid. He's going to clean up the lurker, cleaned up the attempted run by into his natural, lost supply depots that apparently he didn't need because he has so many command centers. And while Clem did back away temporarily from killing Serral's 5th, or whatever you want to call this, he was actually able to keep a lot of his siege units over here. Widowmines and Liberators were untouched. Lings are unfortunately going to run into an already built planetary that's less than ideal, and Clem is now targeting that 5th base, which is low from earlier on. If that goes down, obviously, this base on the 9 o'clock will not hold very much longer either. And here we go, Serral making a bit of a desperate maneuver, trying to send most of his army in through the middle of the map. Not effective enough. Simply not effective enough. Clem's reinforcements, couple of Liberators causing problems, Widowmines to account for, and Serral not able to find the success with that maneuver that he was looking for. Simply loses his hatchery to the left side, and again, if that falls, this one's not going to do anything. So basically 2 hatcheries for the price of nothing really from Clem. I think maybe he lost a Liberator or two, but, you know, overall, only 4 ghosts have died in this game. Good retention on that. The Liberators will continue to be an issue. They always something they have to micro against as a Zerg player. Even if you had Corruptors, that's still something you got to account for. And Clem's really complicating the scenario. Oh, Fungal hitting the heart of this army is wonderful, but EMP still able to come down, and the units mostly survive thanks to all the medevac healing. Serral with the shark attack was looking for a golden opportunity, didn't really find it, more like a bronze opportunity. Doesn't even get the Liberators, they unsiege and race away. 10 drones have been killed during this. I'm not sure exactly where, but I imagine they were long distance mining, and Liberators are still contaminating Serral's side of the map. He can't just send his Hydras in because, well, one-shot Hydra isn't really effective, is it? Ship weapons is even on the way now that the armor has been finished up, which, by the way, is affecting the Liberators. Every time the Hydras try and kill a Liberator, it's surprisingly difficult. That is funny. Oh, man. Liberators are doing enough work here. It'd certainly be warranted. The bio able to retreat behind their liberation zones and then chase after with snipes. I mean, Serral is trying to win these tugs of war, but it almost feels inevitable that he will not. Another hatchery will fall down, and Serral really needs this one. He's mining off of this base at a full capacity, but the other bases starting to get a little low or haven't even been totally resaturated. Serral definitely reaching that time in which the Zerg player gets really worried. They're the race that can't be cost efficient, really, even if they get into lurkers. At this point, lurkers not that effective. When the ghosts are out like this, not so great. So they're never cost effective, really. And so you have to have a bigger economy. You don't have a bigger economy, you're kind of screwed. Serral's resource lost, also just looking particularly painful, even for a ZVT. And this hatchery is going to fall. There it goes down right now, and the Liberator still covering the retreats of Clem's army. No Fungals try and take advantage of this. Serral is going to just tap out, as this has been a almost losing game for, you know, 8 minutes. There's always that chance that Serral could get that one strike into the vulnerable area of Clem, but every time he attempted it, Clem was just barely set up enough and then was taking the rest of the map almost no problem. A wonderful control game from Clem, never messing up enough, never giving Serral enough of an opportunity, and so he will win this best of 5 series 3-1. A really nice result for him as he advances on in the upper bracket of this tournament. There will be more matches from this tournament cast on this YouTube, guys, because there's some pretty great ones. One of the only tournaments we get to see the likes of, for instance, Serral play-ins. This is not the like to join up in those open cups. So I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely the first game was a banger, and the rest of the series was very interesting as well. So like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, and I'll see you here for more StarCraft 2 action.